This is the picking and gutting of the Assa 600. And this is going to be for my purple belt. This is a 6-stack pin tumbler lock filled with barrel type security pins. If you are not familiar with barrel spools, they are often paired with counter milling, which makes this a very difficult lock to pick. Counter milling is a set of grooves that are cut into the pin chamber just below the shear line. The counter milling matches up with the lip of the barrel, which causes the barrel to bind in the lock before it has reached the shear line. Because of this, the lock must be picked in 2 separate stages. The initial stage consists of using heavy tension to slowly and methodically move the barrel spools up into position until all the barrels have reached the counter milling. You'll know that you have completed this stage because the barrels will all fall into line and you'll enter a false set. Once you have reached this false set, you'll move to the second stage. To me, the initial stage is what takes the most time. Picking the pins once they get to the second stage is pretty standard. When you get through stage 1 and you enter stage 2, you can reduce the tension that you're using, and you're going to lift your pins through the counter milling until they're above the shear line, as you normally would. Depending on how many cuts are in the counter milling, which in this case is typically 3, they give an indication of hitting a shear line every time. Would be the best way to describe it to someone who's newer to picking. You'll get a nice click. You'll get some slight counter rotation as they're moving over the ridge and they're entering those little bits of counter milling. As you can see, this is not the quickest pick, and a lot of my time here is spent searching for the pins that are caught in just that final bit of milling. This can be tricky to find without oversetting a pin by mistake. I had a lot of issues with this. The jiggle test is very helpful if you can get a good feel. For me, the jiggle test was easier to feel on the pins that are closer to the front of the lock, but as you move deeper, that sensation got a lot harder to feel. For this lock, I progressively pinned it when I had 4 and 5 pins. The sensation was a lot more palpable. Once I put that 6th pin in, I had a very difficult time feeling any response to the jiggle test. I suspect that with more practice, of course, it'll feel a lot better. I'll get more sensation that comes in response to what I'm doing in the lock. And perhaps for this lock specifically, a deeper hook. For this pick, I'm using the McNally Reaper set, number 5 deep hook, and I'm using a 50 thousandths turner. This hook is just barely able to reach the maximum lift pin that I had for number 6, while also being able to clear the minimum lift pin that was in chamber number 3. That combination made it very difficult to fully set chamber 6 while also trying not to overset or force the pin in chamber 3. Again, if I had a little bit higher of a hook, I think that would have helped me through this. As you can see, I'm still just making my way from pin to pin, trying to gently jiggle test each individual pin without running the risk of oversetting some of these pins. I did notice for this lock that pin number 2 and sometimes pin number 3 were very easy to overset when I was directly pressing on them. The reason for that is once they were set, if I gave them just a little bit too much pressure while I was trying to feel out if that final bit of milling had been cleared, they would start to counter-rotate. And here we go. We finally got this lock picked. Thank goodness that took a little bit of time. Again, this is the Assa 600. You can see by these 6-pin stacks there, along with the anti-drill protection. And we're going to begin gutting this lock. Very straightforward. I'm locking the lock right now back in position. That helps with removing these screws on the back. And there are just 2 screws to remove. And this little tail piece will come right off. There we are. Now I'll just unlock the lock, get my follower, and there we go. With the Sparrow's mat, if I'm going to put springs on, sometimes I just flip it over. To me, the springs are always the top. It doesn't make sense to me that they have the larger opening on the bottom. But here's key pin 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And I'm just going to straighten these out real quick. Get all these in position. All right. Now to remove these security pins. Like I said, these are all barrels. This is pin number 6. Pin number 5. Pin number 4. Pin number 3. And 2. If I can get it, there's 2. And number 1. All right. All right. And give a little close-up of all of the pins. And a little bit more. And there it is. That is the picking and gutting of the Assa 600. And this is going to be my second lock for Purple Belt.